Good morning, everyone. I'm Eric Partington. I'm the Senior Director of Health System Performance at the Champlain Lynn. Very pleased to be with you here this morning. I'm joined by Mehdi Bidal, who's a board member at the Champlain Lynn, and Linda Ramsey, who's a staff member on our communications team. I'd like to welcome you all and express my appreciation and our appreciation for you joining us so bright and early this morning. For this is the second of the series of the Future of Health and Wellness speaker series. As many of you already know, the Champlain Lynn and Algonquin College are partnering together to co-host this series. I'd like to express the greetings from our CEO, Chantal Leclerc, who unfortunately is not unable to join us this morning. She's in Toronto, otherwise she definitely would have been here this morning. Algonquin College and Champlain Lynn are co-hosting these events to spark conversations on issues that are really relevant to our community on the future of health and wellness. I'd also like to extend a welcome to those viewers who are online and to let them know that they can make comments and ask questions via pressing a word bubble at the bottom of their screen and sending us an email. And lastly, and very importantly, I'd like to express my appreciation for the breakfast this morning. I'm sure a collective appreciation. That was fantastic. The breakfast was prepared by the students of the culinary program at the Algonquin College. This room, the Restaurant International, is actually a classroom for those students. So, full-hearted appreciation for the breakfast. If I was doing the grading, A+. Okay. So it's now time to begin our agenda, and I'd like to invite Algonquin President Cheryl Jensen to come forward for opening remarks. Cheryl, thank you.
Well, thanks very much, Eric, and thank you for agreeing to be our MC for this morning. We're so pleased to have the Champlain Lynn as a partner for this speaker series, and really appreciate everybody's involvement and interest in these. I hope everyone is enjoying your breakfast. As Eric mentioned, what a spread. I'm always impressed by the efforts of our learners, for this restaurant is indeed a classroom. We tend to joke around here that if you come to dine at the Restaurant International, you are literally eating someone's homework. And if you come at the end of the term, you could be eating someone's final exam. So thanks to all of you for coming to our second Future of Health and Wellness Speakers Series. Those of you who were here last month, and I think that's close to half of the audience today, were treated to a wonderful presentation by Champlain Lynn CEO Chantal Leclerc. Today we are equally fortunate to have John Fraser, who will talk about a very important subject, especially with an aging population, the future of palliative care in Ontario. But before I introduce Mr. Fraser, I'd like to take just a moment to talk about the future of health and wellness here at Algonquin College. We've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I'm sure everyone in this room understands the realities facing health care in Ontario. The aging population, except for me, the constrained fiscal situation, and the resulting need for an increased emphasis on community care. These things are top of mind for policymakers in the province, for everyone in this room, and for Algonquin College. As a higher education institution that already trains many of the health and wellness workers in this region, and as a community college, we are well positioned to play a major role in meeting these challenges. For example, just after our last breakfast in October, the Ontario Minister responsible for seniors, Mario Sergio, and Energy Minister and our own MPP, Bob Shirelli, joined us here at Algonquin as we launched our new Retirement Communities Management Program. This program, the first of its kind in Ontario, will help equip a growing industry with the skill sets it needs to serve older folks in our region and throughout the province. And just a few dozen meters from here, we are building a smart apartment. This facility will have the latest technology and allow us to integrate our students from our nursing, physio, occupational therapy assistant, our engineering technology students, and even our culinary programs into a learning lab where they will be trained in real-life situations. That's because we've partnered with the Western Ottawa Community Resource Centre to make this lab a functioning adult daycare. Not only will this help our students, it will mean that 10 seniors are off a waiting list and in a program that meets their needs. I am very proud to say that our smart apartment will be finished in January. There is so much more that Algonquin College can do working with our community partners to bring other innovative solutions like our smart apartment and our retirement community management program to the table. I'd like to show you a short video that gives you just a hint of our thinking about what we call our Healthy Living Education Initiative. Could we play the video?
Algonquin College has been a leader in innovation since it began almost 50 years ago. The need for a new approach to health and wellness is clear, and we are well positioned to transform the way the next generation of health and wellness workers care for our community.
The environment is changing quickly, and it's changing in ways that will be fundamental to who the caregivers will be. We know what the fiscal realities of the province are, and we can't ignore those realities. We have limited funds. Where are we going to target to use those funds in a way that's going to reduce wait times, improve health outcomes, keep people out of a merge?
In promoting health and wellness throughout its curriculum and throughout its organization, Algonquin College is getting people to think differently about how we respond to the pressures facing our healthcare system and to the rising expectations around quality.
There's an opportunity for the community and the college to be seamless, whether it's seniors exercise classes, adult day programs, that we can partner with our community and help to meet their needs at the same time that we have an opportunity to enhance our student learning environment.
Well, our vision here at Algonquin College is to create a community hub for graduating the next generation of learners, whether it's health or hospitality or technology, digital learning to business. We'll have co-located businesses here where the community will be coming here, teaching our students side by side. When they leave here, they can say, not only do I know what to do, but I've done it.
By building the kinds of facilities that we can, like a smart apartment, we can simulate those kinds of care environments during their education.
If you look around, we have got, I think, a state-of-the-art health community here with the hospitals, the universities, and with Algonquin College as sort of the convener of all of those different sectors. I can see employees from all of those different areas coming to Algonquin so that we can really learn and take a patient say and have a whole suite of caregivers together with our nursing students who are preparing healthy food, and our early childhood education students come and study that case through our applied research facilities here. That's where the real growth and the new enrichment of the types of programs that we can offer will happen.
It's a win for the students of Algonquin College. It's a win for our community and the employers in the region. And it's a win for the province because it will help solve the fiscal constraints that they're facing.
I don't see this as an Algonquin College center. I see it as a hub of the community and all of the great expertise that we have here in Ottawa.
So like I said, thank you. Thanks very much. Like I said, that's just a hint of where we are going. Stay tuned over the next weeks and months as we work with you, our government and community partners, to firm up our Healthy Living Education Initiative ideas. We're excited about this. Now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker, even though I'm sure John Fraser needs no introduction to most of you. John was first elected to the Ontario Legislature in 2013 as the MPP for Ottawa South. He was re-elected in 2014 and currently serves as Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Health and Long-Term Care. John spent 18 years managing small and medium-sized local businesses before entering public service. He is a lifelong resident of Ottawa and, like me, he is a parent of 3 and a grandparent. Although he has 2 grandchildren, so I have some catching up to do. Not that I have any say in that matter. Please join me in welcoming John.
Bonjour, good morning. C'est un plaisir d'être parmi vous ce matin. Merci de m'avoir invité à prendre la parole aujourd'hui. Thank you very much. I try to take the opportunity, every opportunity I can, to practice my French. I'm working really hard on trying to improve it. And I thank you for your indulgence. I've got to get this thing right. That's the first thing you learn in this business, is just make sure that you're comfortable and you have the mic in the right spot and it's not going to hit you in the nose. So, and I have my glasses here this morning as well too, as I'm aging, and I have to, depending on the lighting conditions, you can only get the font so big. Because when it gets to be like 2 words a line, then it's, things tend to get a little bit choppy. And so I want to, Cheryl, thank you very much for that very kind introduction. And this is the third time Cheryl and I have intersected this week. So I hope I'm like that, not like that bad cold that's going around, which is you think it's gone and then it reappears. So I want to begin by thanking everyone at Algonquin College and the Champlain Lynn for the work that you've put into this, organizing this speaker series. And I want to thank you all for being here this morning. You put a lot of work into organizing this series on health and wellness, and the fact that we're all together today in a forum like this really says a lot about how invested this community is in driving forward the conversation about healthcare. And I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be part of this conversation. And also I want to congratulate everyone with Algonquin College for their leadership you're showing in this forum and the leadership that you're throwing through your Healthy Living Education Initiative. I had the opportunity with Cheryl and Scott last week to hear about that. And it's truly great work. It shows a lot of promise. And it's how we want to lead the future of healthcare here in Ottawa and indeed across this province. So you're training tomorrow's caregivers, and at the same time, you're developing and putting in place new and better ways to deliver care. And at the same time, you're keeping the needs of our community front and center, which is the approach we need to be taking across the board, because healthcare begins and ends with people. You know, most of you in this room know better than I that most healthcare is much more than a job. Healthcare is a vocation. It's a calling. It is a trust. It's a sacred trust. We have a tremendous obligation to the people who we serve. They come to us when they're most vulnerable, and never more so when the end of life is near. And that's what we're here to talk about this morning. I want to start by sharing a bit of my perspective as the member from Ottawa South, parliamentary assistant to the Minister of Health, but also as just a person with a family. Death and dying affects and touches all of us. So prior to being elected, I, a long time ago, was in the grocery business, and then I worked for Dalton McGuinty for about 14 years. So during that time, I had the pleasure of working with a number of people in this, many people in this room, a lot of people in healthcare. It was a big part of our business in the provincial government. You know, I like to think we're where the rubber hits the road with healthcare and education and a number of other things that impact people's lives and really are important to their families. So as my father liked to say, during that 14 years, I learned enough to become dangerous. And then my staff would say that every day I learn a little bit more and I get just a little bit more dangerous. So, and I'm also the son of a nurse. And so I've always had a great interest in healthcare. It was something that I was exposed to throughout my life. And I do, as a bit of an aside, we had a primary healthcare lead in our family. So we had it for us as kids, we had it for our kids, and now actually for our kids' kids. So the solution to the primary care problem in Ontario is just a nurse in every family. You'll actually generate some income, reduce costs. I don't know how feasible it is, but I'm really very proud of my mom. And she was a nurse at the what they call the Tri-Service in the NDMC for 35 years. So we moved forward to the summer of 2014 after my second election, and I was named the parliamentary assistant to Dr. Hoskins Minister of Health and Long-Term Care, which was really great. I thought, I've got work that I want, that's going to be interesting, that's something that I really care about. I felt really fortunate, especially when I like to think it's the midpoint of my life, and many of us at age 55 and older think it's the midpoint. And I thought, this is really great. But then something else amazing happened. Something else amazing happened. And I sat down with Eric, and he said, what would you like to do? I just said, palliative care. It's the first thing that came to my mind. And I feel incredibly fortunate to have been asked that question. Now, I got my mandate letter, and my mandate letter had palliative care. I was quite excited. And then it had this thing called scope of practice. And then I thought, nothing in life comes without a price. And I'm very excited about scope of practice. I'm not going to talk about it this morning, but it's kind of grown on me. And I hear the healthcare people who know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'll tell you why I asked for palliative care. In the mid-90s, quite by accident, I decided I wanted to volunteer and give some community service and work with some seniors and old people. And so I volunteered at I won't say what institution, because I don't want. I volunteered somewhere, and they said, well, I was about 35. I had a day off in the middle of the week, so a bit unusual for a candy striper at 35. But so I went to this, and they said, well, we can't really use you because you're not here every day, and like they kind of turned me down, which was a little. Anyhow, then our pediatrician, Dr. Barry Adams. Nurse or receptionist, Mariel St. Jean, was a volunteer at the palliative care service at the Ottawa Hospital, and or at the General Hospital at the time. So she said, why don't you do this? So quite by accident, I ended up there. I didn't really know what it was all about, and I spent about a year and a half there. And it was really quite an incredible experience. I learned a lot. And as many of you know who are involved in palliative care, many of you get there by accident, and then you realize it's the place that you're supposed to be, and you always end up getting more than you actually give, which is really an amazing thing. So, and then we follow on, and I'm working for the former member and premier, Dalton McGuinty, and I become involved with the end-of-life strategy as it related to places here in Ottawa, the May Court and Rogers House, two really great places here in the city of Ottawa. And so I got kind of immersed in that and learned a bit more and became a little bit more dangerous. And so it's kind of followed me all my life. And then in fall of 2013, after my first election, my father was diagnosed with an inoperable oral cancer. And he had about 3 weeks, actually, I took my seat in the legislature. And it was significant. He had some vascular dementia, which presented some challenges, and our family rallied together, and we were with him right through. He was at home. The only day he ever spent in hospital was in 1937, so he never ended up going back into hospital. He was at the last 3 weeks of his life, he was at the May Court. And so I saw what really, really works in our system, and I saw where people and things fall between the cracks. And it's really kind of two extremes. So it was a very difficult and beautiful time, and I thank all the people who care for my dad. And as we have a big family, I'm not sure we're going to be invited back to the May Court again. I said, all joking aside, and we in our family we like to. It's kind of grinning in the face of death or dying or darkness. Humor never left us. And I have a bad habit of taking things right up to the edge, which, much to my father's chagrin at the time, but he'd always laugh. But there was always, he was always saying, just what goes around comes around. So flash forward to this summer. And I've been busy, and I really hadn't, I've been thinking about my dad, but I never, we always think they're going to come to us in our dreams. And I'm lying on the couch one night in the breezeway, up at our family cottage, and there's this beautiful breeze blowing in, and my dad appears to me in my dream, and it's so real. It is so real. And he goes, "Hi, John." I go, "Hi, Dad. I'm just so happy to see you." And he looks at me and he says, "You need to lose weight." I swear to God. And then I wake up, and I'm laughing. I'm thinking like, "Gotcha." I can't say anything. So I think taking advantage of it sometimes, anyways, it was all in good fun. So I really want to thank all the staff and the volunteers. And I do want to say something about the May Court. And I know this gets repeated in places other than the May Court all across the city where people care and display love for people who are dying or sick, is that if there are places between heaven and earth, May Court and places where do that are certainly one of them. And it makes a big difference, not just in the lives, not just in the dignity that they show to people, but to their families. And I want to thank them for that. Pardon me. I think I just mixed up my pages. So, no, of course, I had to mix up my pages, and then I had to announce that I mixed up my pages. Okay. So as many of you know, the glasses have to go on now. I've been working with Mr. Hoskins to oversee the expansion of hospice care in Ontario to include up to 20 new hospices across the province. This will provide palliative patients the options to spend their final days in a home-like setting. We're taking this step because of our shared belief that we have a responsibility as people, as a society, to think and talk about how best to make the end of life both peaceful and dignified. We have a responsibility to focus on the quality of dying as much as we focus on the quality of living. One of the key areas of my mandate is to support the development of comprehensive strategy of palliative and end-of-life care that ensure all patients have access to end-of-life and palliative care. So it's not just about hospices. Hospices are the things that are easy to see. But it goes right across the spectrum. So we're working to strengthen palliative care and end-of-life care in the home and community sectors so that patients may receive the care that they need. And so when I talk about home, when we talk about home, home is where you're at. So long-term care and retirement homes are home. And we have to bring that approach to that because sometimes we make it difficult for people working in those places to provide the kind of care that people need. I want to give you a bit of an update on some of the other progress that we're making together. I've been holding roundtable discussions around Ontario to inform the development of a comprehensive strategy on palliative care. The first one was right here in the Champlain Lynn, and in total I've done about 14. So I want to tell you a little bit about what I've heard. Number one, we need to be doing more to connect end-of-life care with the people who would benefit from it. The reality is that palliative care can happen anywhere healthcare happens, in people's homes, in residential hospices, in long-term care homes, and in hospitals. Too often, patients and their families don't know the treatment options that are available to them. That has to change. That's why we're expanding the network of residential hospice, and that's why we're committing funding to expand training for volunteers and caregivers. Another message I've heard loud and clear is that we need to take a more personalized approach to how we deliver end-of-life care, tailored to the specific needs of the individual patient. So we're taking steps on that front too. In my consideration, in my consultations, I've had the opportunity to visit different parts of the province, and I'm very proud of the work that's being done here in the Champlain Lynn and the collaboration and commitment that exists here. In all of my travels, it has been apparent, one thing very clear, especially looking at hospices and hospice outreach and hospitals and chronic continuing care, is palliative care is a community-based initiative that government supports. So palliative care is a community-based initiative that government supports. It's not the flip side, which is a government initiative that the public support, which is a lot of our institutions, long-term care, health care. So the strength that exists in hospice palliative care is community. It's the ability to bring people together, the ability to build community. And so when I look at residential hospices and programs and things as we go forward to try and support and fund, those that are more connected to their community, those that have more connections to all their service providers, are the ones that are going to succeed, because I've seen them succeed across the province. So I've been here in Ottawa, I've been to Sudbury, I've been to Windsor, I've been to Alliston, I've been to downtown Toronto, and I probably could spend the next 2 or 3 years just doing this, going around and seeing what people are doing. So, and there's really incredible work that's being done. And I want to read you something that Dr. Xian Xiao, who's a researcher at McMaster, who's been doing a lot of research into palliative care, wrote one day in a session that we were at, and just slid it across the table to me on a piece of paper, and it's taped on the front of my in front of my desk on the wall, so I can read it every once in a while. So it's, at the end of the day, care is provided by people to other people. There is no one model that will work in all jurisdictions because each community is unique and is made up of different people, providers, health and non-health. So we must somehow embrace every region is unique and every community is unique. That means we must focus on replicating the experience and services, but not the model. Each community needs to come up with their own regional model that delivers on standardized care promises and services, but is built on their local resources and assets. And it's very, very true. And so that's why I keep it. That's why it's in front of my desk, because as we all know in healthcare, as you move closer to standardization and support, there's a need to measure and to have accountability. And so when you're dealing with when you're dealing with an organization that's the flip side of what you're normally dealing with in healthcare, you have to keep that in front of you, because you don't want to do something that would inadvertently disadvantage those people who are getting great outcomes. They may be doing it a totally different way than somebody else's across the province, but people are dying with dignity, and the services that people need are there. So if I have a couple messages this morning. Community is the key to the success for palliative care. So we're working hard to do some things in government. We're not going to be able to do everything that we want to do. I think we all know that. I want us to do more than we may be able to do. But what I want to ask you to do as a community is just keep your foot on the gas. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep looking for new ways to partner, not just with government. And come to us, please. Politicians, come to us and ask for things. But ask stuff of each other and look at what each other has and how, like you're doing right now, and how you can come together to support the needs of families, to support the community. We're all going to die. We're all going to be touched by death. On a joke, it peaks about 2032. That's what I hear. So I don't have the exact numbers. I'm just hoping I make it past that. So the other thing we know is we need to have consistency and quality of care delivered around Ontario. So we have our Patients First roadmap to strengthen home and community care that will help address those concerns. The roadmap includes plans for greater patient choice, for palliative care and end-of-life care, expanded access and equity, clear oversight and accountability, and new supports for caregivers. And you'll hear more about this in the coming weeks. As well, there is enhanced public education on the issue of advanced care planning so that families are aware of the wishes of their loved ones when it comes to palliative and end-of-life care. That's another thing I'd like you to remember this morning, is that we're, in our lives, we often confuse the immediate with the important. And the things that are important when you're dying are the same things that are important when you're living. It's just that we're too busy to recognize them. So you need to take time. You need to take time to talk to your family, your friends, the people around you. I know we use the term advanced care planning. I think it's the worst term in the world, but it's the right thing. It's far too clinical. But you need to talk to people about what's important, and then the rest of it will sort itself out. So you need to start those conversations. So you have to take time to do that. So we're also learning we're also improving how palliative and end-of-life care is provided by listening to patients and to caregivers. And we put our commitment into writing by signing the declaration, or the Declaration of Partnership and Commitment to Action. That agreement, as many of you know, is a collaborative effort of more than 80 stakeholders, including the ministry, the LHINs, and Hospice Palliative Care Ontario, and all across the board. It's actually a really incredible thing to have that many people sign on and have the coalition hang together as long as it has, without the kind of support the government should be able to give it. So that's why we're working on this now, and so I'm very sensitive to that. It is maybe not as complex a stakeholder exercise, the scope of practice, but it touches every sector. And I try to make sure that people don't feel left out. If we talk about hospices, I've got to remember PCUs. And but together this partnership has achieved a common consensus on a vision for palliative care and endorsed the declaration and its multi-year roadmap to improving palliative care in Ontario. That was followed up by the creation of the Hospice Palliative Care Provincial Steering Committee in 2012 and the Residential Hospice Working Group in 2013. The group is a partnership between the ministry and a broad cross-section of stakeholders, and it produced a report called Strengthening Ontario's End-of-Life Continuum. That report is informing the ministry's work and developing our hospice strategy, and is also having an impact on the work of our LHINs and how we're going about delivering care in the community. I'd like to take a moment to take you through some of its findings. The report calls for us to prospectively find patients approaching the end of life within communities and take action based on their needs. Offer personalized, patient and family-centered care that empowers patients and families to take ownership of their palliative care and end-of-life journey, enable patients approaching their last year of life to receive exemplary care through flexible, personalized teams within integrated systems, work within communities to normalize aging, death, and loss, strengthen and optimize residential and hospital inpatient capacity for people facing imminent death, ensure strong provincial and regional oversight and accountability, and use technology as an accelerator for connected, integrated systems. That's good advice, and you can expect to see that as we move forward in February this year when I provide some advice to the minister and as we go forward in this year's budget. So we also have an AG's report, which I give you a little bit of a summary of, but actually I won't, because the reality is, in my mandate letter, it says to develop a strategic plan for palliative care. That's not what I'm doing. A whole bunch of people have done that work. They've done that work for years. The job that I have is, what are the first steps forward that we're going to take? What are the steps that we can take in a resource-constrained environment to make sure that we have the biggest impact for the dollars that we invest? And that's a challenge. You know, we've invested in nursing programs. We're investing in education. We need to do more in that regard. So here's the thing. I'm going to open up to questions right now. I'm just going to dump the rest of the speech. Don't tell the people in the ministry. So the two things that I want you to remember this morning, and I want you to ask me tough questions too. That's the third thing I want you to remember. Is number one, is the strength in hospice palliative care is in community. So don't take your foot off the gas. Don't stop looking for people to partner with. Think about your workplaces. Think about how you deal with death and bereavement. We're all in this thing together. We're all going to die. We're all related to people who are going to die. We're all going to have friends who are going to die. And we have to, as a community, come together to build what we need to make sure that people have a dignified access and have access to quality palliative care and pain management. And the other thing I want you to remember is talk to your family, talk to your friends about the things that are important. I'm not going to call it advanced care planning. Just start a conversation about the things that are important. the rest of it will follow. When you come to a point, if you've focused on those things that are important, and if you come to a point where there's a decision, and you know you're getting there, you can take steps forward. But it's going to begin with the first step, and that's talking about things that are important. And I want to thank you for your attention this morning, and I look forward to any questions that you have. Thank you very much. Okay, thanks. No, sorry.
What are the first steps you want to take in a resource-challenged environment to improve palliative care?
Well, I think one of the things that I know that we have to, number one, from the hospice perspective, is we're going to have to look at additional support for hospice, because the challenge is that the community component is great, and it's very helpful, but some of them are struggling, and we haven't changed that in a number of years. I don't think we're going to get to the 80% number, and then we have to look at the rollout of the residential hospice, the commitment we have to 20. I think that'll make a big difference, but there's still work to be done in long-term care. Still work to be done in hospitals and PC. It touches everything. So we are going to, you'll see shortly, we're going to move forward on how we can have a strong network that ensures quality, consistency, provides directions, metrics. I think those are the things that we're immediately going to move forward on. We have to, have to strengthen home and community care, which we're talking about. That's palliative care is in that envelope. We have to make it work better, and we have to make it work more consistently, and people have to know what to expect. Right? So people, we need to do a lot to educate people. And part of that is the message this morning about advanced care planning. I hate that word. But it's really hard. It's really hard to transform a system. 80% of the people want to die at home, but they don't know how that works, and they don't know what the decisions processes are to get there. We were lucky. I have 3 sisters, so we did overnights with my dad for 6 months. Not everybody can do that. And but sometimes people need to know, how far we can go to provide services to people, and what people are going to have to do, and what the community is going to have to do to come around people, because that's what's going to happen. Have to happen. It's not just government-funded healthcare that's going to solve palliative care. It's what people in the community decide. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do for each other's dignity. This is what we're going to do for our friends. This is what we're going to do for our family. And that's why palliative care is kind of a great community-building exercise. It's something that touches everybody.
Hi, my name is Nadine Volk. I'm the Executive Director for the Champlain Hospice Palliative Care Program. So Thank you very much. I'm going to do a little shameless self-promotion here, because all of my potential partners are in the room. So if you're interested in being involved in some of the fantastic things that are happening in Champlain, please come and see me. So now for my tough question. I'm interested in hearing more about what's happening with the work that's been done around residential hospice and the plans or the hopes to build more residential hospices across the province. I'm curious to know the timelines and how some of those decisions are going to be made.
Well, I think, first of all, we have a commitment to 20 new hospices. So they're all at various stages in development across the province. And we have a couple of things that we have to look at, which is regional disparities. So there's some places where there are people don't have that care. They don't have access to hospice. And in some ways, it can be very central to community programs as well, too. It's kind of a hub. So we have to be respectful of that. And then there's some places where hospices exist right now that need more support, because I can think of 1 or 2 where we're not supporting them at all. So here's the principle that I believe, this is the principle that I see as most important as we make decisions about residential hospice. The more connected a hospice is to an outreach program, to the hospital, to the long-term care, to the community. You take a look at a place like Windsor and the level of connections that the hospice has there. And I know that our hospice is connected here as well too. But the more connected you are, the more successful you'll be because you're pulling people in. It's really, it's what I said earlier about a community-based initiative. That's what makes it strong. That's what makes it work. That's what pulls people in because there's a need. And so I think just going forward, as we go forward in my recommendations going forward, I'm not sure whether we're going to lay out a roadmap for the next 3 years or start with a number and then see where people are at. Because one of the components is there's fundraising that are involved. There's and different people are at different places. So I see it rolling out over the next 3 years, and I suspect that it won't all come out in one shot. It'll be a process of making sure that they're viable and that they're going to be effective in the community. They can't be standalone because if they're standalone, it's not. They're not going to. They're not deriving the greatest benefit for their community. So, thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for your leadership on this.
Well, thank you. I feel pretty lucky.
Hi, my name is Dave Reddy. So in the past, I commend you, Minister, first of all. We go back a long way when we started Rogers House, and I know, John, it was you and the Minister of the day that led the way in making it possible and did some very innovative things for pediatric palliative health care, so congratulations on that. So one observation and one question. My wife and I, Leslie, have been through in the last probably 3 months, 3 or 4 friends that have died. The ones that got into the system early, the ones that were educated and the ones that had someone leading the way for them, the system works. Mm-hmm. So once they got into the system, things worked really well for them. It was as it should be. They ended up dying at home. Mm-hmm. They ended up being with the people they loved. Where it seems to me the real problem is, and my question is about education and what we can do about that is, and you spoke to it, to get to people early, whether it be the practitioner themselves, the doctor, whether it be the caregiver, or whoever it may be, to get people into the system so they understand what is available to them and what their options is, and that dialogue takes place. So the question is, how would the province, or how would you lead the way in becoming more proactive in the education process for people?
Well, I think that there's a couple of things that we're doing right now. As I said, we're working, and you'll hear more about our development of a province-wide network. We're investing in volunteer and caregiver training. The broader answer is we need to socialize dying. So it's not something we talk about. So we need to socialize that. And when I talk about having the conversation, maybe the conversation is the right word, then people realize, they think about it. We don't think about, I don't spend every day thinking about my mortality or the mortality of the people around me. But we have to spend some time thinking about it. And often death is viewed as, can be viewed as a failure when it's really just part of life, and depending on who you are and what you believe is just another process. I often think if we put a quarter of the effort or a third of the effort we do into bringing people into this world and apply that to not just as governments, but as people, then we wouldn't be where we're at right now. So, there's challenges around. I think only 30% of physicians are comfortable having that conversation. That's a big challenge. So I know that the OMA and the CMA are looking at those things. They have initiatives. So it's really socializing it. It's talking about it. It's akin to talking about mental health. So it's a grassroots thing, and that's not to say government doesn't want to support and aren't going to be there. It's just it's not going to work unless it starts there. So that's how we get there, and that's why I care about it so much. I could probably talk all from, I say, know enough to be dangerous, of all the things I've learned and seen about how we put, where things work really well and where things don't work really well, and how, for instance, something like facilitated access for palliative care drugs doesn't work if it's on the weekend or in the evening, where in some places access to hospice doesn't work because it's not during the hours of 8 to 5, Monday to Friday. I don't think that's not the way our lives are organized. They're 24/7. So, but the most important thing is people have to socialize it, they have to talk about it, they have to talk about what they want, and they have to learn what they can expect and what their role and responsibility is in that. So, there was a question over here.
I'm Valerie Fassett. I'm a professor in nursing studies here at Algonquin College, and thank you very much. I actually think I worked with your mom at NDMC.
Oh, there we go.
So,
all right. You'd know.
Yeah.
Everybody said you look like your dad, but it's like, take a look at my mom.
Again, would really like to thank you for your message today and your commitment to hospice palliative care in Ontario. And I agree with Dave. I think we really need to emphasize a palliative approach to care throughout the spectrum of people's experience, wherever they are and experiencing health care. I want to maybe get you to go back to your notes a little bit and talk a little bit about the Auditor General's report and the role that CCACs play in the delivery of community-based palliative care, and how can we work on and what the plan is from the ministry's point of view in terms of developing and moving forward with the development of home care.
Yeah. Well, as you know, the minister announced last week that we have to actually transform our home care into a model that works for people. There are a lot of people working really hard in the home care system. The challenge is, I think we've been working on a model we've been working about for about 14 or 15 years, and we kind of keep patching the boat. So you have things. So I think we have to open. I know the minister. The minister who is leading this knows that we have to open up how we look at care, things like bundled care. How do we ensure that those people who are managing an individual's health care follow that person? How do we follow that person through the process? One of the things that I discovered that I think is a real challenge is how we manage cases. So, people, here's a case. As you go through the system, you might go through 2 or 3 case managers who are all working very hard. But it must be really difficult. That person becomes this, right? When you're with the person a lot longer, they become that person. So how do we connect the people who are not just delivering the care, but the people who are managing that care to those people? I think that's a key. That's a key in that change. How do we look at what resources we have in the system? And I go back to bundled care, that the kind of work that they're doing at St. Joe's. How do we look at the players that we have in the system to have an outcome-based approach to home care, right? As part of a continuum for whatever. It's funny though. We talk about quality-based procedures, and so how do you put palliative care into that, right? But I think you can. It's just not intuitive. And so, and the other thing that really people have to know what to expect, because they need to know what their responsibility is in that care, because they have a responsibility. Home care can't take care of everything. Even if we had way more money, it still couldn't take care of everything. So, as for the Auditor General's report, what really came out of that was, of course, from a residential hospice perspective, the relative inequity there is across the province. And she did identify inequities across home care and palliative care programs. So we have to, and also that we need a network, that we really need some quality and consistency, and an ability to measure, to make sure that all the partners are doing what they say they're doing and what they need to do, and that they learn from each other. So that's kind of the way forward on that. Thank you. There we go. Oh, God, I thought I got away. Right.
Amy Portis from Briere. Thank you so much for your talk this morning and sharing on the future of palliative care. I wonder if you could talk a bit about what you see the role of acute palliative units or palliative care units in helping support the hospice strategy.
Yeah, it's all a continuum. So, and I've had the opportunity, Jose, who most of you probably know in the room, and I've talked quite a bit about the challenges that are faced in acute palliative units. And we have to do more to support that. You know, I know that, and it's come up more than once, that health system funding reform doesn't work well in all the cases, especially when it deals with complex continuing care. So we're going to need to do something to fix. We're going to have to figure out a way to fix that. The real challenge in palliative care is there's all sorts of fixes that have to go, like how do you get primary care physicians to start talking about how do you improve access. There's, for instance, two of the things we're working on, which is improving facilitated access, which is making sure that people can get the drugs they need that are covered beyond the hours of 8 and 5. Nursing, this is small, but it's important if you're in the situation. How do you solve the certificate of death situation where nurses, when there's an expected death, and we've done some work on it, it's kind of stopped, is they can sign off. So as far as home, people dying at home, you want to have that facility because you don't want to wait 5 hours because you can't get the on-call physician. And that's not a criticism, but that's a little thing, but if you're stuck in the middle of that, that's not great. Or if on a Saturday, your mom needs palliative care drugs and your physician, they couldn't get facilitated access, and you got to pull out your credit card. May be fine for a lot of people, but maybe in a rural, remote community, it's not going to work. So getting back, I recognize very much the importance, the role that they play in terms of, because sometimes care is too complex for the scope of those people who are practicing in the hospice. So, because you can have unexpected and significant events, and you don't want a practitioner, you don't want a practitioner feeling out of their depth or not ready to deal with a convulsive event that they or a bleed out or so it's. So they have an important role to play, and I recognize that. I can't tell you what the solution is, because as many of you, I'm still trying to sort out HSFR. But there's a recognition that that's important, and Jose has been a great advocate for that, and a whole bunch of other stuff. As you all know him, so he's our meetings never last any shorter than about an hour and a half. And that's my fault too, because we kind of go back and forth. Well, one more.
You mentioned the drug coverage with facilitated access. I actually have two questions.
Mm-hmm.
One, who exactly are you working with, and
Mm-hmm.
how do you plan to remove that, like the Ontario Drug Benefit or OMA?
Yeah. So, sorry, go ahead.
And I have a second question. I also do visit nursing in the community with end-of-life clients, and right now there's obviously a real shortage of nurses in the community. We get 3 or 4 emails a day of end-of-life clients that need shift nursing in, and there's no one to cover. I know there's a huge wage inequity. Not sure if that plays a role or if it's just, you need that type of person. But is there any plans for help with recruiting more nurses into the community from a government perspective?
We're always trying to do. We are always trying to do that, and it is a challenge. It is a challenge because there is. It takes a special kind of person to work in the community, and they have to want it because it's not easy, right? It's not you got to move around, and you're dealing, and your resources are different. They're limited. My mom was a VON nurse when she started early on, and so I have some understanding of that. So there's always a challenge with recruiting, and I know there are wage inequities that exist. I can't tell you that I can commit to addressing those things, but we. I want to say a few things about facilitated access. Facilitated access is a great thing because it didn't work before, and they made some changes to make it work. But as with everything, healthcare is in a continuous improvement. So to answer your question, when I first saw this, I thought, just fix it. It's straightforward to me, but it's a little bit more complicated. I said that's low-hanging fruit, which is a little higher up the tree, because you got to talk to it's ODB. I know that we're going to get there. It's the OMA, and we'll get there because we need to. We're going to. The thing is, we're going to get this thing done. So that it needs to change. It needs to work for people, even if it's 150 people. I know it's more than that. Maybe 400 people across the province who get stuck in that situation. Maybe 100 of them don't have the resources to be able to put down that card to buy the $200 worth of drugs they need to get, right? And I know that it's probably somebody takes care of it, because I know that people who work in this field that somebody will help, but it creates anxiety for that person, and there's no need, and we need to change that. So working with the OMA, ODB, so inside the ministry they're working on it. We're working on certification of death, which is work that we've, it doesn't sound like a big thing, but if for some families, if you've got to wait 6 hours or 5 hours or 2 hours or 3 hours before you can start the process of taking care of your loved one's final exit. And there are a number of things that we're working on, like that's what I like to call low-hanging fruit, and then the people who I work with say, well, it's actually not that low on the tree. These are all the steps that we have to take to do it. Like for certification, it's like the Registrar General, the Community Ministry of Consumer Services, colleges. So there's like 5 or 6 partners around the table. And facilitate access isn't quite as many partners, but it's there's a few, right? So it takes a while to work those things through, and we'll get there. We'll get there because we have to. It's the right thing to do. And thanks very much for what you do, too. There you go. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Fraser, for your time and your sharing your message and vision this morning. Much appreciated. Very important topic. A few of the takeaways that I wrote down was just the importance of the mindset, the importance of focusing on the quality of death as well as the quality of living, shifting that, and you likened it to mental health stigma, and just making sure that we focus on changing that in our society. Very important. On setting, building capacity, particularly in the hospice sector, in the community, and having a focus that palliative care is a community-based service supported by government, which is a very important message. The importance of collaboration as well. We need to work together through teams, volunteers, health service professionals, to make sure that we make sure people have a good death at home, for whatever good death means to that individual and that family. Very important. I'd like to say, just let you know that the LHIN, we are strongly supportive of the work that you're doing, the government's doing in this area. It's part of our integrated health service plan for the next 3 years. We're very well positioned in the Champlain LHIN. We have a strong regional palliative care network, lots of providers that provide excellent care across the full continuum of palliative care. So I think we're very well positioned. So we won't be taking our foot off the gas, and thank you very much. So I'd like to invite Algonquin College Senior Vice President of Academic, Claude Brulé, to please come forward for closing remarks. Thank you, Claude.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you for being our MC this morning. I'm going to do like John here and put my glasses so I can see what I'm doing here. So I'd like to thank once again the Champlain LHIN for partnering with us on this speaker series to bring and share ideas on how to go about the future of health and wellness for our community. And just by the questions we've had this morning here, I can see that this is an important dialogue that we need to continue. And I want to thank Mr. Fraser for being here today to share his thoughts. I'd like to thank him also for asking for palliative care in his mandate letter because it needs a champion. And as you've made the case through your personal experience, it's a critical component of our health and wellness strategy to bring what you call exemplary care that brings peace and dignity for everyone's personalized experience. So thank you for your remarks. As Cheryl mentioned earlier in her remarks, this is the second of our speaker series event, and I recognize many familiar faces in the audience, but for those of you who weren't here at our last event, you can watch Chantal Leclerc's remarks online at algonquincollege.com/live, and I certainly encourage you to do that. It's time well spent, and I guarantee you'll enjoy her remarks. Now, we won't be hosting an event in December. It's a busy time of year for everyone, but we are making plans for the next event in January, and we hope to give you some news of that before the holidays. And this brings us to the end of our agenda today. I would like everyone to thank everyone for starting your day with us and to broaden the conversation around the future of health and wellness. With that, we'll say good day, and we'll see you in the new year. Thank you.